Where are you watching us from? I'm here with us in this space that seems so quiet, but for someone else it could be the worst storm imaginable. Why do I say that? Because this is a story about silences that hide unbelievable elegance and about voices that need to be heard. Pay close attention, because what I'm about to tell you will make you question everything you thought you knew about appearances and humanity. And if this story grabs you, if it makes you feel what these characters felt, promise me you'll sign up. Promise me you won't miss the next story, because stories like this need to be told. The ballroom Le Palais d'Or in Paris was a place of luxury, encounters, and celebrations. Its tables with white tablecloths and silver cutlery were the stage for human drama. The story we are going to tell today, however, is not about luxury and celebration, but about a moment of arrogance and redemption. Alexandre, a millionaire in the finance industry, was at a gala party. His life was a race against time, a game of chess where he was the king. The only sound he heard was the sound of his own ambition. But in that hall, the sound of his ambition was drowned out by the sound of his own heart, beating in despair. His life was not perfect. His son, who had a rare disease that prevented him from speaking, was in a hospital bed. His son, who was his greatest treasure, was silent. And Alexandre, who was a man accustomed to solving problems with money and technology, could not solve his son's problem. He had taken his son to the best doctors, the best therapists, but nothing worked. His son's illness was a mystery, and Alexandre, with all his wealth, felt powerless. His wife, Marie, tried to cheer up her son. She was a woman with a big heart and tried everything to make her son feel loved. But her son's gaze, a look of resignation, was a weight on Marie's soul. In that hall, Leah, a 20-year-old cleaning lady, was cleaning the floor. She was autistic, with a condition known as Asperger's syndrome. She didn't like eye contact, she didn't like loud noises, she didn't like being touched. The world, for her, was a very loud, very confusing place, and her life, for her, was a daily battle. Leah was an exemplary cleaner. She was fast, efficient, attentive, but she had difficulty communicating. She, who had difficulty understanding the emotions of others, could not understand Alexandre's pain, but she felt it. She felt his pain, and she felt that her own silence, which had once been a barrier, could be a bridge to connection. The cleaning staff, who at first hadn't noticed Leah, began to notice her. The way she cleaned the floor, the way she moved, the way she spoke. Everything about her was different, but her difference wasn't a problem. It was her strength. The party was almost over. Alexandre, who was in a business conversation, stopped talking. He looked at the janitor. Leah, who was silent, was cleaning the hall, and a look of disdain, a look of arrogance settled on his face. That's when the unexpected happened. One of Alexandre's friends, Pierre, who was a man of dubious humor, approached Leah. He looked at Leah, and he, who barely spoke, said, "Do you like parties?" Leah, who was silent, looked at the man, at his serious face, at his eyes that did not make eye contact. She shook her head. "I can't. I'm a cleaning lady." Pierre, without hesitation, looked at Leah, and he said in a clear but monotonous voice, "The party isn't about being rich. It's about being happy. It's about having fun." And without hesitation, he knelt in front of Leah. He took her hand gently, respectfully, and in his soft voice he said, "I'll be your feet, and you'll be my heart. I'll guide you. You'll lead the party." And he began to move. He began to dance. And Leah, who was in shock, began to dance with him. She, who had been paralyzed, was dancing. She, who had been silent, was feeling. She was alive. And Leah's smile, a smile of hope, was a ray of light in the darkness of the hall. Alexandre, who was watching the scene, froze. He, who had seen the cleaning lady in his hall for years, had never seen her smile like that. He, who had the power to solve any problem, couldn't solve the cleaning lady's problem. But the autistic waitress, with her humanity, solved it. And his life, at that moment, changed forever. Leah's story is the story of a person who lives in a world she doesn't understand. Since she was a child, she has been fascinated by everything related to logic, mathematics, and dance. She would spend hours and hours in her room, with the music turned down low, dancing. Dance, for her, was her way of expressing herself, her way of connecting with the world. Her mother, Anna, a woman who worked as a cleaner at a school, knew that she was different. She knew that Leia's silence was not the absence of a voice, but the presence of a voice that needed to be heard in a different way. With the help of doctors and therapists, she understood that she was autistic. The diagnosis was a shock at first, but Anna, who was a strong woman, decided that she would not treat Leia's autism as a disease. She would treat it as a part of her. She decided that she would create a world where Leia could flourish. The biggest challenge for Leia has always been communication. She had difficulty expressing herself, saying what she felt, and she had difficulty understanding the emotions of others. So she isolated herself. Her dancing became her safe haven, her refuge, her world. But her life was not a fairy tale. The other children who did not understand her isolated her. They called her weird and mute. Leia suffered in silence, but she had her mother, Anna, and she had her dancing. Anna's greatest challenge had always been fear. Fear that the cruel world would hurt her daughter, fear that her innocent daughter would lose her way. But her fear was overcome by love, the unconditional love she felt for her daughter, the love that made her fight for her, the love that made her her voice in the world. Anna, who was a woman of faith, believed that her daughter, who was so different, had a mission to show the world that genius is not the absence of a disability, but the presence of a strength that needs to be valued, and the mission to show the world that a person's silence can be the loudest voice of all. Alexandre, the millionaire, lived in a bubble of false hope. He believed that money, technology, and the best doctors in the world could solve any problem. He believed that life was a game of chess and that he was the king, and that he could move the pieces as he saw fit. He hired the best neurosurgeons who examined his son. The diagnosis was the same: psychosomatic paralysis. His mind had blocked the connection to his nerves. They suggested therapy, hypnosis. Alexandre paid for everything, believing that the solution lay in science and technology. But Alexandre's false hope was his greatest weakness. He couldn't accept that his power and wealth couldn't cure his son. He couldn't accept that the solution to his son's problem wasn't in medicine, but in humanity. He paid for expensive therapy sessions, but the therapist, who was a famous woman, didn't know how to deal with his son's trauma. She tried to get him to talk about the accident, but his son, who couldn't talk about his mother's death, shut down. The therapy wasn't working. Alexandre, frustrated, thought about giving up. He thought about admitting his son to a psychiatric clinic, but he couldn't. He loved his son more than anything, and he felt that if he gave up, he would be giving up on his life. Alexandre's false hope was poison. Every failed attempt, every wrong piece of advice, every closed door was a scar on his heart. His life became a daily battle, a battle against his own helplessness, a battle against his own arrogance. But Alexandre's false hope was about to be confronted by the truth that the solution to his son's problem was not in a hospital but in an autistic boy's notebook. The truth that healing is not the absence of disease, but the presence of a miracle, and that miracles are sometimes the simplest things in the world. The story of Alexandre and Leia was not just a story of hope, it was a story of conflict. The conflict between money and humanity, between science and intuition, between arrogance and humility. The salon manager, a man named Bernard, was a man of rules and procedures. He who was responsible for the salon did not believe Leia's diagnosis. "Mr. Alexandre, I know you're desperate, but what this cleaning lady has done is an aberration. Her dancing is not professional. It's strange. Are you listening to a cleaning lady? You, one of the richest men in the world, are listening to an autistic cleaning lady?" Alexandre, who at first sided with Bernard, was in doubt. He had seen Leia's dance. He had seen the logic, and he felt that Leia was right. "Bernard, I know what she did is strange, but her dance makes sense. What if she's right?" Bernard laughed. "What if she's right? Mr. Alexandre, the cleaning lady is autistic. She lives in her own world. She has no idea what she's talking about. Are you listening to a cleaning lady? You, one of the richest men in the world, are listening to an autistic cleaning lady?" Bernard's arrogance was the human conflict. He, a professional, couldn't accept that an autistic cleaning lady could be smarter than him. He, an expert, couldn't accept that the solution to Alexandre's son's problem wasn't in his manual, but in a cleaning lady. And the conflict intensified when Anna, Leia's mother, entered the scene. She, a humble cleaning lady, confronted Bernard. "Mr. Bernard, my daughter is not a freak. She is a genius, and she sees the world in a way you will never see. You should have the humility to listen to what she has to say." Bernard, who didn't know what to say, felt humiliated. He, the manager of the salon, was being confronted by a cleaning lady. The human conflict was the dilemma between science and faith, between prejudice and wisdom, between ignorance and truth. And Anna, with her strong voice, had forced Bernard to choose the truth, to choose humanity. The salon, which was a place of hope and despair, became a place of conflict. Bernard, the manager, was furious. He was about to fire Anna and kick Leah out of the salon. But Alexandra, the Millionaire, intervened. Alexandra, who had seen Leah's genius, decided he would give the cleaning lady a chance. He called Anna. He said he wanted Leah to work with him. "Anna, I know what I'm about to ask you is strange, but I believe your daughter can help my son. I want her to work with me. I'll pay whatever it takes." Anna, who was in shock, didn't know what to say. She looked at Leah, at her dancing, and she, who was a woman of faith, believed that this was her chance, a chance to show the world that her daughter, who was so different, had a purpose. Leah worked silently on a project. With Alexandra's help, she created an exercise program that wasn't about strength but about rhythm. And with Alexandra's help, she created a choreography that wasn't about walking but about feeling. And with Alexandra's help, she created a dance that was about life. Leah's project was the silent turnaround, the project that science couldn't solve, the genius of an autistic cleaning lady solved. And the most important turnaround of all was not in Alexandra's son's health, but in Alexandra's mind. Alexandra, while working with Leah, began to understand what autism was. He understood that autism was not a disease, but a different way of being. He understood that autism was not a limitation but a strength. He understood that Leah did not need to be cured. She needed to be accepted. The silent turnaround had happened. Prejudice and ignorance were about to give way to empathy and acceptance. Leah's world, which was so small and lonely, was about to expand in an impressive way. And Alexandra's world, which was so big and noisy, was about to learn to listen. The first time Alexandra's son did the new exercises, he felt something different. He felt a slight vibration in his feet. He felt a slight contraction in his muscles. He felt hope. And for the first time in years, he looked at his father and smiled. A shy but sincere smile. And the first time he danced Leah's choreography, he felt that her logic made sense. He felt that his body, which had once been a prison, was becoming a bridge to freedom. He felt that he could walk again. And Alexandra's son's small victory was much more than a smile. It was the victory of having his hope restored. It was the victory of having his voice, his authentic voice, recognized. And it was the victory of showing everyone in the hall that he was much more than a victim. He was a survivor. Bernard, the manager, who had initially judged Leah, became one of her biggest supporters. He apologized to her. He thanked her. And he looked at her, not with pity, but with admiration. Leah's life, which had once been lonely, became full of purpose. She helped people. She taught people. She became a leader, a silent leader. And her voice, which had once been silenced, became the voice of hope. Alexandra's life, which had once been filled with despair, became filled with hope. He, who had once been a man of money and technology, became a man of humanity and heart. He became Leah's best friend, and he became the father his son needed. The story of Alexandra and Leah teaches us that hope is not an emotion, but a choice. It is the choice to believe in the impossible. It is the choice to hear what is not said. It is the choice to see what is not shown. It is the choice to respect difference. It is the choice to love. Alexandre, the billionaire, became one of the greatest advocates for neurodiversity. He used Leah's story to change the culture of his company. He used Leah's story to show everyone that autism is not a disease, but a strength. He used Leah's story to show everyone that true strength does not lie in being like others, but in having the courage to be who you are. And Leah, seeing Alexandra's transformation, felt loved. For the first time in her life, she felt that she was not only accepted, but valued. She felt part of something. She felt human. Leia's reflection was not just about the world. It was about herself. She wondered how many times she had judged a person by their appearance, by their behavior. How many times she had ignored someone's silence, thinking it was empty. She regretted judging Bernard at first, for thinking about firing him. She felt ashamed. Leia's transformation was not only external, it was internal. She began to be a more humane, more empathetic leader. She began to care about her coworkers, to listen to what they had to say, even if it was in silence. She created an inclusion program at the company, a program that was not only for people with autism, but for all people who felt different. She remembered Anna's words. Love doesn't try to change who you are, but helps you be the best version of yourself. She understood that love, true love, wasn't just for family and friends. It was for everyone, for the janitor, for the manager, for the customer, for the world. And Igor, seeing Maximilian's transformation, felt loved. For the first time in his life, he felt that he was not only accepted but valued. He felt part of something. He felt human. Life at the salon changed. The place that had once been a place of despair became a place of hope. People became more open. They felt comfortable being who they were. Leia, who had previously gone unnoticed, was now the center of attention. She helped people. She taught people. She was the pillar of the salon. But most importantly, she felt happy. But Leia's life did not become a fairy tale. Her autism was still there. She still had sensory crises. She still needed her dancing to calm down. She still had difficulty making eye contact. But she was no longer alone. She had a friend, Alexandre. She had a team that supported her. She had a purpose. Leia's story shows us that hope is not the absence of pain, but rather the presence of tools to deal with it. Leia still felt the pain of autism, but she had the tools to navigate life. She had her passion for dance. She had the support of her mother, Anna, and she had the acceptance of Alexandra and the entire dance hall. Leia's story is not about curing autism. It is about accepting autism. It is about the beauty that exists in difference. It is about the power of silence. And it is about the voice that exists in each of us, even if it is not spoken. What Leia's story teaches us is that true strength does not lie in being like others, but in having the courage to be who you are, even if that is different. And that true wisdom does not lie in knowing everything, but in having the humility to listen. Not all love speaks, but all true love listens. If this story touched you, like, comment, and subscribe. Someone may need to hear this today.